Chapter 12. The abyssal demons originated from the demon temple deep within the winter forest. This fact is almost universally known across the continent today. In the eyes of most scholars and clergy, the demon temple was built by a demon lord in ancient times. After being defeated by the great goddess, the demon lord, unwilling to accept defeat, left an endless curse within the demon temple to bring endless disasters to mankind, ultimately to exterminate all life on the continent. The power left by the demon lord infected and transformed the creatures near the demon temple into the terrifying abyssal demons. However, the demon temple itself is considered to be without consciousness, merely a building storing powerful forces. But now, in Adrian's memory, years ago, a heretic who was executed by the church had claimed that a deity resided in the demon temple. If this deity was pleased, it would grant endless treasures, powerful abilities, or even infinite vitality. The condition was that you had to pay a certain price. Of course, you also had to be extremely lucky. After all, those who could find the demon temple were rare. The church firmly denied such claims and burned the heretic who made these statements alive. At that time, as a fairly devout believer, Adrian believed in the church statement. However, now Adrian couldn't help but start pondering the truthfulness of those words. Because, after hearing that statement and turning around, a sphere radiating with crimson light and surrounded by countless blood-colored butterflies suddenly appeared in Adrian's vision. The moment he saw this sphere, an unknown pressure from the depths of his soul forced him to kneel on the ground. There was no powerful energy pressure around the sphere, no magic, no innate energy, nor the abyssal demon's unique black shadow energy. It was simply emitting light, and yet this touch of crimson light made Adrian tremble uncontrollably, gasping for breath. His instincts told him this seemingly powerless sphere was more terrifying than any being he had ever encountered. Even the giant gray wolf he had encountered earlier could not compare to it. At that time, even the abyssal demons growling in the distance fell silent at the appearance of the sphere. Under Adrian's shocked gaze, those demons actually prostrated themselves on the ground. What is this? Moreover, this place seems to be an abandoned temple, right? An ancient temple in the winter forest, surrounded by abyssal demons. My God, have I really stumbled upon the demon temple? Realizing this, Adrian immediately held his breath, sweat involuntarily dripping down his forehead. After silently observing the red sphere for a moment, Adrian tremulously asked, Is this the demon temple? This. Hearing Adrian's words, the sphere seemed somewhat speechless, and then its tone even carried a hint of helplessness. This name, sigh, never mind. If you're referring to the place where abyssal demons were born, then yes, this is the demon temple. Then are you the demon lord? The sphere fell into a brief silence again. I really don't understand where these titles come from. Anyway, just think of me as the demon lord. Is that really true? Upon receiving the affirmative answer from the sphere, although Adrian's heart was still uneasy, he began to feel an indescribable excitement. If what the heretic had said was true, if he was fortunate enough to come to the demon temple, then he had the chance to make a deal with the demon lord. As long as he was willing to become a servant of the demon lord, he could gain powerful strength. With this, he could return to his territory and annihilate his uncle's family and all those foolish people who betrayed him. Being thrown into the winter forest might not be a disaster, but an opportunity. Realizing this, Adrian suddenly started kowtowing frantically to the sphere in front of him. Blood splattered everywhere. Demon Lord, I, Adrian, am willing to serve the demon lord forever. I only hope that the demon lord can grant me enough power to achieve my revenge. After that, Adrian kept shouting excitedly, trying to show his worth to the sphere in front of him. His desire for power was written all over his face. After expressing his loyalty, Adrian anxiously watched the sphere, waiting for the final answer from the demon lord. He tilde. A laugh without any discernible emotion echoed in Adrian's mind. Okay, tilde. I was planning to help you anyway. Your willingness just saves me a lot of time. The next moment, under Adrian's expectant gaze, a crimson space magic circle outlined itself in front of him. As the magic circle operated, a gem emitting purple light appeared in front of Adrian. Feeling the vast energy emanating from the purple gem, akin to a sea of stars, Adrian's eyes sparkled with greed. At this moment, the sphere's voice, like a devil's whisper, slowly transmitted into Adrian's mind. Hold this gem, and it will give you strength. It will rapidly enhance your abilities. Hold it, I understand. Hearing this, Adrian's face showed no more unease, only unprecedented excitement. The fallen noble didn't hesitate and scrambled towards it. But remember, you must let go after reaching the 6th tier. If you absorb too much energy, you bear the consequences. I understand. Adrian hastily responded, and then immediately grabbed the purple gem without any hesitation. Boom tilde tilde. With a ground-shaking force, the moment he held the gem, a strange purple energy like liquid burst out from the gem. Like a tsunami, it swept over the entire hall. Then this violent power continuously surged into Adrian's body through his arm. Tilde tilde tilde. This feeling, it's amazing. Feeling the increasingly powerful energy in his body, Adrian unconsciously showed an intoxicated expression, even his brown eyes gradually revealing a hint of madness. 4th level. Peak of the 4th level. 5th level. Peak of the 5th level. In just a few seconds, Adrian had ascended directly from the 4th to the 6th level. It should be noted that even for a person with exceptional talent, advancing from the 4th to the 6th level would typically require several decades. And he had reached this unattainable tier for ordinary people in just a few seconds. A feeling of ecstasy spread wildly in Adrian's mind like a virus. After reaching the 6th level, according to the sphere, he should have stopped. However, the rapid expansion of his strength and the side effects of that strange power made Adrian's greed in his heart soar alongside his growing power. He didn't plan to stop. Just a bit more power. I might become a saint level 7. At that time, I could do whatever I want in the entire kingdom. Thinking this, under the indifferent gaze of the sphere, Adrian kept absorbing the power within the gem. A bit more. And a bit more. Moments later, Adrian's actions abruptly stopped, not because he had become a sage, but due to an intense feeling of discomfort inside his body. His body suddenly showed numerous cracks, which rapidly increased in number and spread wildly. After Adrian uttered a small exclamation, an overwhelming power uncontrollably burst from his body, causing his flesh to explode. Boom! Accompanied by splashing blood and flying internal organs. Adrian exploded on the spot, turning into a pile of fragmented flesh. Watching this scene unfold, the red sphere, which is the consciousness condensate of Yumo, sighed helplessly and with frustration. Why did it fail again? Damn it! How many times has it been now? The shadow force is the primary energy within the abyssal demons. This power is stronger and more terrifying than magic, fighting spirit, and even the holy power of the church. It is the source of the abyssal demon's strength. However, this power has a significant flaw. Those who use this power tend to be extremely violent, and if the recipient is not strong enough, they might fall into an uncontrollable frenzy. This is why most abyssal demons are mindless, bloodthirsty monsters. At the same time, this power also stimulates the desire for power within the organism. The purple crystal summoned by Yumo is a concentrated form of shadow force she personally crafted. The moment Adrian touched the crystal, the pale purple shadow force surged into his body, transforming the body of this Marquis son. It granted him immense power. But at the same time, the side effects of the shadow force activated his hidden desire for greed. If Adrian could control this desire, he could undoubtedly succeed and become a terrifying being with the shadow force. But reality has no ifs. Controlled by greed, Adrian aimed to gain more power, to reach the 7th level. But his body did not have the capacity to withstand it, and he was ultimately killed by the rampaging shadow force. Exploded on the spot. What was left was only the scattered flesh and blood. Failed again. The red sphere, the collective consciousness of Yumo, sighed helplessly. Then, with Yumo's permission, the abyssal demons lurking on the other side of the lake quickly flew over the lake and entered the palace, greedily devouring the flesh and blood on the ground, absorbing the remnants of the shadow force in the air. After all, we can't waste it, right? Besides, Yumo doesn't like her body, inside the temple, being littered with such nauseating remains. As the abyssal demons excitedly devoured the gift given by their mistress, the purple crystal slowly floated in front of Yumo. Looking at the crystal she had painstakingly created, Yumo's surrounding red light gradually dimmed, seemingly displaying her disappointment, as this was not the first failure. "Sigh, I must improve it," Yumo muttered to herself with mixed feelings. And as she pondered, a huge gray figure slowly entered the hall from the entrance. It was a giant wolf covered in snow-white fur, radiating intense shadow force. If Adrian were still alive, he would be astonished to find that this giant wolf was the very abyssal demon that had been relentlessly chasing and toying with him. His finding the demon temple wasn't just good luck. The giant wolf, filled with a violent aura, stepped into the hall, even crushing Adrian's exploded head under its foot, scattering brain matter. With this, the remains on the ground were completely dissociated from their original form. Seeing the giant wolf come home, Yumo shifted her attention from the crystal, and a gentle voice sounded. "Welcome back, Limo." Hearing Yumo's words, the giant wolf's tail seemed to wag excitedly. Then, a terrifying surge of gray shadow force erupted from the giant wolf's body, forming a huge energy vortex around it. As the power flowed and the magic circle emerged, the body of the giant wolf began to shrink visibly and gradually transformed into a human form. After a wave of gray light subsided, the energy vortex dissipated, and a naked, slender girl appeared in front of Yumo. Her skin was delicate and pure white, but with long red hair draped over her shoulders, her exquisite features could drive anyone insane. Combined with her fluffy beast ears and large tail, she appeared even more lively and adorable. However, as the girl opened her blood-red eyes, her eyes filled with brutality and bloodlust. Her sharp canine teeth also revealed in her mouth. The atmosphere around the girl suddenly changed, becoming filled with a deadly aura, like a beast about to attack. A cold air unreservedly emanated from her, rapidly dropping the temperature in the hall. The abyssal demons feasting on Adrian's remains felt this chilling aura and shuddered. That higher-level oppression was not something they could resist, feeling the terrifying gaze locked onto them. The common abyssal demons, usually terrifying to ordinary people, pitifully whimpered and then fled the demon temple, hiding in the forest. For a moment, the vast demon temple became empty once again, leaving only the floating red sphere, the surrounding blood butterflies, and the fiercely looking beast-eared girl. However, Seeing the abyssal demons wisely retreating, the beast-eared girl, Limo, reigned in her hostile aura. The icy sternness on her face instantly vanished, replaced by a particularly bright smile. "Mommy, I'm back." Under Yumo's helpless gaze, Limo hopped over to her. Mom, I've captured those exiled guys you wanted." As soon as she finished speaking, the girl gently waved her hand. A gray shadow force burst out of her, forming two gray energy chains. Under the girl's control, the gray chains swiftly shot outside the hall, directly dragging two unconscious men into the hall, pulling them in front of Yumo. Then Limo waved her hands in front of her mother, seemingly excitedly claiming credit. Look, these are the two." Looking at the two bloody, half-dead men on the ground, missing arms and legs, Yumo felt a sense of helplessness in her heart. These two fifth-level men must have tried to resist Limo, or they wouldn't be in such a state. Sigh. This child, her hands are neither light nor heavy. Ahem. Well, at least it's better than before. In the past, when she went out to capture people, she always brought back a pile of mincemeat. Thinking this, Yumo let it go. The words she wanted to use to teach Limo a lesson were swallowed back down. A red, quiet shadow force gently rippled around the sphere, forming a hand shape, and gently rubbed the beast-eared girl's head. "Very good, my little child is really amazing, Tilda." "Hee Tilda." Limo responded with a sweet smile, her beast ears twitching and her tail wagging excitedly. After all, for her, nothing was more delightful and pleasing than receiving her mother's praise. However, the next moment, Yumo's tone suddenly changed. "But Limo, how many times have I told you, after transforming into a human, remember to wear clothes? You silly girl. Are my words just wind in your ears?" Limo's meow. Looking at the naked and helpless wolf girl in front of her, as if on the verge of tears, Yumo's heart was filled with a mix of emotions. Regarding the girl's perfect and attractive body, Yumo didn't actually feel anything. On the one hand, as the consciousness of the demon temple, she couldn't have that kind of inflatable reaction. On the other hand, and more importantly, it is just too familiar. She had seen it too much, so she had gotten used to it. During the time when this girl had just learned the transformation magic, to be honest, Yumo was a little uncomfortable. A beautiful older sister frolicking freely in front of her, not liking to wear clothes, made Yumo's nerves taut, forcing her to empty her mind to avoid temptation. Regardless, even though she was now a consciousness without a physical body, she had nearly 20 years of male sexual experience before. She was still an inexperienced rookie in that regard. This kind of hot scene was really not something she could bear. So during that time, Yumo often couldn't take it anymore and packed up Limo with a piece of cloth and threw her out of her perceptual range. This made Limo think that she was being rejected by her mother and cry like crazy. As time passed, Yumo got used to it. When she saw Limo's body, there was no longer that nervousness, but instead a feeling of displeasure. This stinky girl finally learned the transformation magic after so much effort, and has such a beautiful body, but doesn't know how to cherish it and run around in the mud and not wear clothes all day. It's simply wasting such a treasure. And you keep doing it over and over again. Even now, I still can't have my own body. If I can have a human body, even if it was a girl's body, I would accept it. For the past 500 years, Yumo, that survives with consciousness, was very eager to obtain a physical body, especially a humanoid body. However, Limo is very disdainful of a humanoid body. In most cases, she moves in the form of a giant wolf, which inevitably makes Yumo slightly unhappy. However, she doesn't know if her education is problematic every time she finishes educating Limo. This child always forgets what she's been told. Just 2 days ago she was spanked, and today, as soon as she changed back to her humanoid form, she forgot to put on clothes. You little brat, you're really asking for it. Using shadow power to transform into an energy hand, Yumo tightly gripped Limo's furry ears. Then, without mercy, she gave her a 360-degree spin. Limo was directly in pain, tears streaming down her eyes. After all, her ears were the most sensitive part of her body. It hurts, it hurts, it hurts. Wah, 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 mommy, I'm sorry. I was just too excited and forgot to dress up to report my accomplishments. I'll go right now. After struggling to break free from Yumo's merciless, iron claws, Limo ran to the nearby throne, took out a set of tattered fury coats and put them on. Then, she jumped back in front of Yumo. Mommy, I'm dressed now. To this, Yumo seemed to have a black line floating around her body. I said, Limo. What is it, mother? Didn't I teach you to clean the bloodstains and dirt off your body before putting on your clothes so as not to dirty them? Did you forget again? Upon hearing this, Limo was stunned, and then somewhat at a loss. She opened her clothes and looked down at her body, which was covered in blood and black mud. For a second, a drop of cold sweat dripped from Limo's forehead. I'm sorry, Mommy. I was wrong. I'll wash up right away. Feeling her mother's increasingly substantial black aura, in order to avoid being thrown into the water by her mother, Limo very conscientiously took off her fur coat without a word and leaped into the nearby lake. Gurgle, 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 tilde. After a moment, a bubble appeared on the surface of the water, and the bestiared girl slowly poked her head out of the water, looking pitifully and seemingly cute at the nearby red light ball. Mother, I know I was wrong. I won't do it again, wow. Looking at the wolf girl constantly blowing bubbles in the water, Yumo sighed resignedly. Never mind, I'll give you another chance. Also, remember not to throw your clothes around. Speaking. A red light rippled slightly, and the fur coat that had been thrown on the ground by Limo was lifted up by the red shadow power and drifted to the lakeside. You'd better wash it before you wear it. Seeing that her mother didn't seem to plan on continuing to get angry, Limo breathed a sigh of relief and nodded very obediently. Okay, Mommy, I'll clean it. That's better. This feeling of taking care of an ignorant child is really tiring. When will this little girl learn to be civilized? Yumo muttered in her heart. Forget it. It's a long and difficult road, tilde. She experienced the fatigue of being a parent for a while. Limo. Yes, mother, is there anything else you need? Not really. After washing it, help me lock up those 2 humans that you caught, feed them, and don't kill them. Oh, I see, but Mom, aren't you going to continue testing? Limo tilted her head curiously. No, there's no point in continuing. 8 or 9 out of 10 will fail. I need to adjust the content of the shadow power inside the crystal first. Maybe I can't get the power all at once. I need to take it step by step. Staring at the crystal floating in front of her, Yumo said lightly. However, after hearing the word adjustment, a hint of melancholy emerged from Limo's red eyes, and her 2 furry ears on top of her head instantly drooped. Wu tilde, it's another adjustment. Limo had some emotions because she knew that every time her mother made that so-called adjustment, it would take a lot of time and energy. During this time, her mother had no time to play with her, so Limo was naturally unhappy. Can't we just not adjust? Looking at her mother in the distance, Limo muttered in a low voice, feeling depressed. However, within the influence range of the demon temple, as long as Yumo didn't enter the consciousness space, most things could not escape her perception. Naturally, Limo's complaining voice also flowed into her ears. Helplessly, Yumo sighed. Nothing we can do. If we don't adjust, The success rate of ordinary humans accepting power is just too low. Why bother with those humans? They want to eliminate us every day. Why do you want to give them power? There's no other. After putting away the purple crystal, Yumo sighed. I have to shape a little boss to help the protagonist team level up. Otherwise, how can they grow? If they don't grow, how can they kill me? If that's the case, the trial will fail, won't it? The trial cannot fail. The silver-haired girl who brought her to this continent, to be honest, Yumo can't remember her face now. It's not that her memory is bad, but for some reason, she just can't recall that memory. Whenever she thinks of the silver-haired girl, all she can remember is her stunning silver-white hair and her seemingly large chest. Everything else is a vague memory, from her appearance to her voice. Although she's not sure why, Yumo suspects that the silver-haired girl modified or sealed her memories when she was being transformed. However, this doesn't matter to Yumo since her ultimate goal is to help the protagonist team complete the trial task. After that, she will regain her freedom, and according to the silver-haired girl, she can allow Yumo to return to her hometown after the task is completed. Therefore, Yumo has been working hard for hundreds of years to achieve this goal. The final stage of the trial is to kill herself, which means destroying the demon temple and completely freeing the entire continent from the shadow power of the abyssal demon. Even if demon temple is destroyed, Yumo's consciousness can still be preserved. It's just a formality. Before seeing the task given by the silver-haired girl, Yumo had thought about something else. Since the ultimate goal is to destroy the demon temple, why not just lead the protagonist team directly there and let them demolish the place? However, Yumo quickly abandoned this idea because a few hundred years ago, while she was thinking about it, some church heroes entered the demon temple. So, Yumo decided to use them as test subjects to see how difficult it was to destroy the demon temple. Of course, there were already several demon kings beings around the demon temple, and once the situation went wrong, they would rush out to protect her and reduce the heroes to ashes. Demon King is 8th level. However, the result proved that arranging for Demon Kings was completely unnecessary. Because these 3 heroes at the Saint level had been busy for 7 days and nights, trying all kinds of attacks, yet they couldn't even take down a single brick or tile from one 6th level Abyssal Demon, let alone Demon King. Even after launching a combination attack, they ended up with depleted souls and failed miserably. Watching this scene, Yumo was completely confused. And yet they still dared to boast about their powerful attack, haha. After this, Yumo gave up on her unrealistic idea. After all, the strength of the protagonist team was probably around the peak of the 5th level, and their attacks were probably not even as good as a massage for her. So, she had to train them, she had to help them grow, she had to level them up. Oh, and she had to equip them. As the saying goes, a boss who can't take care of their protagonist won't be able to see the Buddha. Normal 5th level abyss demons were not difficult for the protagonist team, and it was not meant to send them against such opponents. As for the demon kings, they were too powerful and would kill them directly. What's the point of that? Perhaps a 6th level abyssal demon could be a decent opponent, but she couldn't just keep sending them brainless trash, could she? As a qualified villain, one not only needed strength but also intelligence. To help the protagonists grow smoothly, Yumo had been planning to create some powerful and intelligent little bosses for them to defeat and gain experience. For various reasons, she decided to let the intelligent races on the continent absorb power and become little bosses, and thus began her experiments. However, the experimental results so far had not been ideal. What can I do? I have to continue working hard to make sure the protagonists can kill me smoothly, Yumo said with a helpless sigh. I'll go experiment now. I'll leave this area to you, Limo," she added. With that, the red light ball disappeared with the purple crystal. Limo. After hearing Yumo's sigh, Limo, who had been listening quietly, did not continue speaking as usual. Instead, she hugged her knees and silently sank into the lake. And most importantly, the expression on the wolf girl's face had already lost the previous obedience in front of her mother, and was now filled with killing intent. Her widened red eyes were covered in fierce bloodshot veins, and her claws were deeply embedded in her thighs. The girl seemed to be trying hard to suppress her anger. After some time, the lake gradually became stained with blood. However, Yumo's attention was focused on the improvement of the crystal, and unfortunately, she did not notice the wolf girl's little mood change. As night approached, in the sky above the eastern part of the winter forest, a black-haired man wearing black armor and a deep blue feather crown rode a powerful griffin and flew in the clouds while observing the situation in the forest below with a telescope. Thinking back to the scene he had seen before, the man couldn't help feeling lucky. Speaking of which, the demon who was chasing Adrian earlier, that white giant wolf, her big size and the coldness all over the body, should be the Snow Devourer. Abyssal Demon King. There are only 6 in the entire continent. I didn't expect to be able to see one of them today. Fortunately, the Marquis had cast 3 layers of shielding and perception magic on him. Otherwise, if he was discovered by the Snow Devourer, a single annihilation beam would turn him directly into ash. It must be noted that this level of Abyss Demon can easily destroy a country. Indeed, our Marquis is still so far-sighted. While feeling lucky, the man's face became serious. The Marquis's command to him was to confirm Adrian's condition and to ensure that he was devoured by the Abyss Demon, dying in an extremely cruel way. If Akat luckily didn't encounter the Abyss Demon, then the man's task was to lure out an Abyss Demon or personally take action. In any case, Adrian must not be allowed to return alive. So when Adrian was thrown into the forest to live or die on his own, the man hid in the sky and observed. After seeing him being played with by the Snow Devourer, the man judged that Adrian was bound to die. However, how did he suddenly disappear, suddenly vanished, not a trace? What is going on? Moreover, not only Adrian, even that terrifying Snow Devourer was gone too. The man was extremely stunned and couldn't understand how these 2 obvious targets suddenly disappeared. Snow Devourer was understandable after all. That entity was a terrifying existence at the Demon King level, and her movements were not something a person of his rank, a 6th level, could grasp. But what about Adrian? He was just at the early 4th level. He was a dignified 6th level and an S-rank mercenary. How could he possibly lose track of someone like him? Continuously searching in the air, but not finding any trace of Adrian, the man couldn't help but begin to doubt his life. At this moment, a bold guess suddenly popped into his mind. Wait! Avoiding my perception suddenly and then disappearing, could it be that he passed through some kind of barrier? According to the information from the church, there was an unknown barrier surrounding the demon temple, making it impossible for outsiders to detect its existence. Could it be possible? In an instant, the man's face showed an incredibly excited expression. The doubts in his mind were swept away, and they were replaced by indescribable joy. Ha ha ha! If I can bring this information back and sell it to intelligence agencies or the church, I'll be worry-free for the rest of my life. Thinking of this, the man's smile became even brighter. However, as the saying goes, joy can turn to sorrow. Just as the man was ecstatic, a clear and crisp voice like a silver bell suddenly rang in the man's ears. Sorry, Mommy doesn't plan on letting you go. Huh. What is this voice? A little girl. How is that possible? This is the great winter forest. How can there be a little girl here? Who are you? In an instant, the man's face changed drastically. Fear spread wildly in his heart. Then he quickly drew the sword at his waist and turned around sharply, in the direction where the sound came from. However, as he turned around, the man was horrified to discover that the source of the voice was not some little girl, but a huge shadow covering the sky and the earth. What the? Before the man could figure out what was going on, he didn't even have time to exclaim. Under the emerald light, this S-level top mercenary and the griffin beneath him were crushed into minced meat by the giant claws. After several days of busy work, Yumo's adjustment of the purple crystal also came to an end. Afterward, she began to adjust the number of abyssal demons in the great winter forest. There are two ways for abyssal demons to be born. First is that warcraft or humanoid races are influenced by the power of shadow when they are within 10 kilometers of the demon temple, and they directly transform into abyssal demons. The other is through the spread of abyssal demons. For example, if a person was injured by an abyssal demon and the wound is not treated in time, they will be infected by the power of the shadow on the wound, lose their reason, and transform into bloodthirsty demons. In a sense, this is somewhat similar to the zombies in Resident Evil that Yumo watched in his previous life. In any case, more than 500 years ago, before Yumo became the consciousness of the demon temple, the power of the shadow in the demon temple would turn all surrounding creatures into abyssal demons, and these abyssal demons would rampage uncontrollably, causing the number of demons to skyrocket. The rapidly increasing number of abyssal demons soon almost wiped out all the creatures in the great winter forest, and without food, they began to move outward. This caused great suffering for all living beings on the continent. Fortunately, in the face of this unprecedented crisis, the forces on the continent chose to set aside their previous grievances and work together. They eventually managed to barely repel the invasion of the abyssal demons. However, the losses suffered by these forces were unprecedented and would be difficult to recover from in a short time. If the abyssal demons horde were to move south again with even greater numbers. If that's the case, there might not be many people left on the continent. Starting with a hell difficulty, what's the point of having a protagonist team then? Do you still need to have trials? Therefore, about 300 years ago, Yumo began to implement a strict plan to control the number of abyssal demons. At the same time, she also worked to protect the ecological balance within the winter forest. Only by ensuring that there are enough other monsters in the forest can the food source of the abyssal demons be guaranteed. With enough food, these children will not actively rush out of the forest. Of course, the premise is that those in the continent don't come and seek death. As the saying goes, those who dig their own graves cannot live. After reducing the number of abyssal demons and ensuring food supply, Yumo can basically ensure that most of the abyssal demons stay quietly in the middle and deep areas of the winter forest. Even if some of them rush out to attack humans, there is nothing to worry about. With Yumo's help, major forces have already constructed countless defenses outside the winter forest, and there are no major problems in blocking a few abyssal demons. Right. Well, in short, in order to give the forces on the continent enough time to recuperate, Yumo has put a lot of effort into it. However, there is another problem with this approach, which is that after the frequency of abyssal demons appearing in front of people has greatly reduced, the fear of the new generation toward abyssal demons has also decreased. Gradually, more and more people are entering winter forest for various strange purposes, which is a bit annoying. Well, although most of them, like the church hero Pix, eventually died in the mouths of the abyssal demons, Their dying counterattacks sometimes still manage to kill a few abyssal demons. Since Yumo cannot stop these people from seeking death, she might as well use them as experiments and references. Sigh. After completing the annual demon census and transforming back into a red ball of light, Yumo let out a sigh of frustration. The statistical results she just obtained were unsatisfactory. This year, only 320 abyssal demons died. That's 50 fewer than last year. It's been 5 consecutive years of decline. However, the number of adventurer deaths has risen to 5,300. The death toll of abyssal demons continues to decline, but the number of adventurers is increasing. This is ridiculous. The abyssal demons I set up around the forest perimeter are all the lowest level. How can they be so difficult to deal with? Yumo couldn't help but think deep in her heart. These adventurers' achievements are getting worse and worse, making Yumo suspect the quality of the strong people on the continent. Could it be that the abyssal demons haven't invaded for too long, causing those people to neglect their training? If this continues, how will these people on the continent cooperate with the main group to attack the winter forest? A bunch of useless humans. Yumo couldn't resist cursing in her heart, which is very rare for her. She also thought about whether she needed to let Limo and the others cause a commotion to reawaken those fools' sense of crisis. They didn't need to cause too much trouble. Just picking a small country near the winter forest and wiping them out should be enough. Or maybe find a way to help them reform their education and training system. Forget it, forget it. I don't want to think about it anymore. After all, I can't leave here. Yumo said to herself, giving up. Then she locked her attention on the empty space in front of the demon temple. On that empty space, hundreds of various types of monsters were trembling on the ground, while beside them were the abominable monsters, abyssal demons, resembling flying dragons covered in black aura. Under the gaze of these 6th-7th level abyssal demons, these usually ferocious monsters became as docile as puppies, lying still on the ground. It seemed that if they do any useless move, the abyssal demons would tear them apart and devour them. However, the souls of these monsters still made the nearby abyssal demons restless. Even 7th-level abyssal demons couldn't resist their inherent nature of hating other living beings. The raging aura spread around the demon temple. If Yumo hadn't given them instructions, these abyssal demons would have already rushed forward and turned these hundreds of monsters into a meal. However, as the crimson light flickered, the frenzied atmosphere outside the temple was suddenly calmed down with the appearance of the red light representing Yumo's consciousness. The abyss demons surrounding them couldn't help but converge their killing intent and instinctively prostrated themselves on the ground. Yumo was quite satisfied as she looked at the group of monsters brought by Limo, who represented her consciousness. Although Limo had caused a lot of trouble, her efficiency was indeed top-notch. Within half an hour of her issuing orders, Limo had brought these hundreds of monsters to her. I must praise her later, Yumo thought to herself. Then she shifted her attention to these monsters. It's time to replenish the numbers, she thought. In the next moment, as the red light flickered around the sphere, an uneasy feeling spread within the group of monsters. With their extraordinary instinctive sensing ability, the monsters sensed an unprecedented feeling of crisis as soon as the red light appeared. They began to restlessly move around in a state of anxiety. Escape became the only thought in their minds at the moment, but the abyssal demons standing on all sides had completely blocked their escape routes. Under these circumstances, the group of monsters could only scream in despair in place. As they wailed, strange black energy spread out from the earth and continuously invaded their bodies. With the influx of this power, their mournful cries gradually gave way to violent roars. Their appearance gradually became ferocious and terrifying, but undoubtedly more powerful and vigorous. Their momentum continued to rise, and their overall strength, which was roughly at the third or fourth level, had now reached the fifth or sixth level. Oh, perhaps they shouldn't be called monsters anymore. They had become newborn abyss demons. Not bad, Yumo said with a playful feeling, as she looked at the group of newly transformed abyssal demons. At that moment, Yumo's consciousness suddenly paused, as some unwelcome guests had already entered the influence range of the demon temple. This made Yumo feel a little uneasy. There seemed to be quite a few annoying people recently. The total area of Winter Forest is approximately 9.3 million square kilometers, which is roughly the same size as Hua-Guo, where Yumo lived before. It is incredibly difficult to locate the exact position of the demon temple within such a vast forest, using only some shabby written records. As a result, most adventurers who enter the Winter Forest in search of the demon temple end up failing, and leaving the forest alive is considered a stroke of luck. Even if someone has strong abilities and good luck to reach the deep east of the Winter Forest, it is basically impossible to find the demon temple. This is because the exterior of the demon temple is covered with top-level enchantments and a special forest mist. Without Yumo's agreement, no one can find demon temple based on their own abilities. If Yumo agrees, she can easily make anyone who approaches the temple to lose their way, trapping them in the Winter Forest. They will either freeze to death or become food for the abyssal demons. Recently, Yumo has mostly ignored these invaders. She won't allow them to enter the temple, nor will she actively send out abyssal demons to attack. She just lets them fend for themselves. However, today, after thinking for a moment, Yumo decided to let them enter the enchantment. As a result, the abyssal demons who originally intended to attack these people all hid their claws. The mist that confused people's minds slowly dissipated, and even the trees began to move positions to construct a forest path for these people. As Yumo expected, these people who intruded into the eastern forest did not hesitate to follow the path toward the direction of the temple. After traveling for dozens of hours, the middle-aged man named Bailamu finally stepped into the holy land he had been dreaming of. Looking at the ancient ruins around him, filled with solemnity and coldness, and the towering pillars covered in inscriptions, Bailamu was extremely excited when he arrived at the legendary demon temple. His blood boiled and flowed rapidly, and his heart even had an impulse to jump out of his chest. I succeeded. Great Demon Lord, your devout follower has finally arrived at the demon temple. Ha 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 ha. It's too unbelievable. This must be the blessing of the demon lord. When he entered the demon temple, Bailamu almost danced with joy. At the same time, Bailamu and his subordinates also noticed the giant white wolf lying next to the temple, exuding astonishing killing intent. Bailamu's body trembled involuntarily, and a chill ran down his spine as he laid eyes on the wolf. Despite the wolf not exerting any visible force, its mere presence, lying on the ground and observing them, filled Bailamu with an indescribable sense of pressure that overwhelmed him. This kind of pressure was not something that the saint-level heroes of the church could compare to. Bailamu was almost certain that this giant wolf was the legendary Demon King. Snow Devourer. If a Demon King like Snow Devourer was quietly resting here, and this dilapidated temple was not the temple of demons, then where else could it be? Moreover, the fact that Snow Devourer, a ferocious abyssal demon, did not attack after seeing us was definitely due to the instructions of Demon Lord. Only the Demon Lord can command Demon King beings. Indeed, we are the chosen ones, blessed by the Demon Lord. Our unwavering devotion must have touched the heart of the Demon Lord. Balamu couldn't help but think excitedly. The next moment, under the icy gaze of the white wolf, Balamu and his companions hurriedly ran to the center of the temple, and then without hesitation, knelt down on the ground, raised their hands and made a prayer-like gesture. After saying a few obscure and incomprehensible words, Balamu bowed his head and shouted toward the direction of the throne. "Great Demon Lord, we are devoted to your cause. We have traveled from the far reaches of the Red Lotus Empire to be here. We express our deepest gratitude for your divine protection. We have meticulously arranged the most exquisite offerings in your honor. Our utmost desire is for your satisfaction, and if you find favor in them, we humbly beseech you to bestow your blessed blessings upon us, mighty great Demon Lord." As Balamu spoke, the white giant wolf's eyes flickered with a trace of ferocity, causing the figures in black robes at the entrance of the hall to tremble visibly. As for Balamu and the others kneeling in the center of the hall, they fell into a state of uneasy excitement after speaking and waited anxiously. The entire hall was suddenly silent, and the only thing that could be heard was the low breathing of the snow devourer. Time passed second by second, and the hearts of the people grew more and more fearful. These devout followers began to look around uneasily. Except for Balamu, the middle-aged man with blonde hair remained kneeling on the ground and raised his hands, his expression of piety unchanged on his face. "Great Demon Lord, you brought us here, so you will definitely bless us with your presence." He firmly believed in his heart. And as it turned out, Balamu was not wrong about this. In the next moment, Balamu and the others were surprised to find that dozens of butterflies emitting a red glow with crimson patterns had appeared above the empty hall. These butterflies slowly descended and hovered around the followers of Balamu. At the same time, a genderless, mechanical voice suddenly sounded in everyone's minds. "Hey, what kind of offering are you referring to? What is this really happening? Has the Demon Lord responded? Is these red butterflies a symbol of the will of the Demon Lord?" For a moment, Balamu was overjoyed and quickly turned his head to look at the many followers kneeling on the ground. "Quickly, show the sacrificial offerings we've prepared for Demon Lord." "Right away." At these words, one of the kneeling strong men stood up and then forcefully pulled the dozens of black-robed people standing in front of the great temple inside by yanking on the chains on the ground. "Quickly take off your hoods, show yourself to the Demon Lord." The strong man roared without any hesitation. Faced with the strong man's existence, the 33 black-robed people didn't dare to resist. The next moment, the chained-up group of black-robed people trembled and took off their hoods, revealing their true faces. As expected, they were all handsome men and beautiful women of all body types and species, even including elves and beast-kinf. The youngest appeared to be under 10 years old. Looking at the excellent slaves behind him, Balamu flattered and looked at the blood-red butterfly in front of him. "O mighty Demon Lord, these are all top-quality living sacrifices. Many of them were specially trained by our divine punishment sect. They have delicious meat. Moreover, there are various races and flavors, and there will definitely be something to your liking." Hearing Balamu's words, the other followers around him also echoed. Meanwhile, the slaves controlled by the chains nearby showed a hopeless expression and could only stare at the ground with lifeless eyes, full of deep despair. Listening to the flattery of the so-called followers, and looking at the group of slaves with hopeless faces, the spittle of the bloody butterflies gradually became low-spirited. "Damn it! Who came up with this idea that sacrificing could obtain my blessing? How many thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, have come to offer sacrifices to me, including those who have not entered the demon temple? Most of these are children with exceptional talent. Can't you raise them properly? How are you going to eliminate the abyssal demons in the future like this?" Really, it's so infuriating. Offering a sacrifice will gain you my blessing. Yumo naturally did not approve of this statement, but strictly speaking, she had indeed granted ordinary human beings power. More than 500 years ago, when her consciousness had just merged with the demon temple, her heart was still quite unstable. As long as those who invaded the influence range of the temple did not show obvious hostility, Yumo would not send out abyssal demons to eliminate them. Even for some adventurers or young people, Yumo would guide them into the temple, giving them food and a small amount of shadow power, allowing them to leave Winter Forest. It seemed that after that, rumors about the demon lord began to spread outside. Since then, some foolish people had entered Winter Forest from time to time, wanting to offer sacrifices to empower themselves. They dug out people's hearts, burned them, and made Yumo feel uncomfortable. She tried to warn these idiots many times, but they just wouldn't listen and kept bringing slaves for sacrifices to Winter Forest. However, most of these people and their sacrifices died directly in the outer or middle part of Winter Forest. Very few people could enter the influence range of Demon Temple. At the same time, in order to satisfy themselves and obtain powerful abilities and skills such as eternal life or strength, the sacrifices chosen by these so-called believers were people with extremely strong talents and powerful soul energy. Choosing these talented people from the common people and sending them to their death in the Winter Forest. It's just idiotic. In this day and age, the strength of young people in the Ansita continent is constantly declining. You brain-dead people are definitely responsible. Yumo couldn't help but curse in her heart. In the final trial to charge at Winter Forest, the protagonist's team needed a strong army. These children with strong soul power might become extremely powerful combat forces in the future. However, they died inexplicably like this. If the protagonist's army can't even defeat the outer abyssal demons in the future, then won't I cry to death? Moreover, using children as sacrifices is simply intolerable. The more I think about it, the angrier I become. Yumo's inner thoughts were not calm, but rather filled with anger. As her mood rapidly worsened, the demons outside the temple gradually revealed their ferocious claws. The bloody butterflies floating around Bailamu and the others also became restless, and Yumo's voice once again echoed in their minds. I'll accept the sacrifices you brought, and in return for your efforts, I'll give you a reward. As her voice echoed in their minds, the bloody butterfly, which was the carrier of Yumo's consciousness, slowly floated toward these believers. What rewards? Is the demon lord going to give us power? Oh, thank you, great demon lord. After excitedly shouting, Balamu became extremely flushed and looked even cringier. He tried raising his right hand while watching the bloody butterfly fluttering in front of him. The bloody butterfly soon landed on the back of his hand, while other believers behind him imitated his actions, reaching out to catch the butterflies. For those who didn't react in time, the butterfly simply landed on their heads. For a moment, the believers kneeling in the center of the hall had intimate contact with at least one butterfly. As the wolf caught sight of the scene unfolding before her, she couldn't resist displaying a subtle smirk, mocking the situation. Of course, these joyfully delusional believers didn't notice the strangeness in the wolf's gaze. Well, strictly speaking, they didn't have the courage to look directly into the wolf's bloody red pupils. Ordinary people don't have the courage to meet the gaze of a demon king existence. Is this for real? Will I finally obtain the long-sought eternal life? Will I become a saint rank or even a deity? Gazing at the butterfly on the back of his hand, as bright as blood, Balamu couldn't help but fantasize about his bright future. After successfully obtaining power, he would definitely gain a higher position within the divine punishment sect. Just as Balamu was lost in his fantasies, the bloody butterflies on their bodies gradually emitted bursts of crimson light. Under the excited gazes of the sect members, the red light became more intense, even gradually enveloping their bodies. But as the red light grew stronger, Bailamu and the others' expressions suddenly changed, because they were shocked to find that they did not obtain any power from the bloody butterflies. Instead, their own magic power, aura, energy, soul power, and even vitality started to flow out of their bodies toward the bloody butterflies into the red light. What, isn't this supposed to give us power? What is happening? My lord, what is? Suddenly, the excitement on Bailamu's and the others' faces completely disappeared, replaced by unparalleled confusion and heart-wrenching terror. Didn't we just offer the highest sacrifice to the demon lord? Why did the demon lord take away our vitality? This goes against what we are taught in the divine punishment sect. As their vitality was taken away, a sharp, excruciating pain surged into their brains, making the members of the sect cry out in ghostly wails, scaring the black-robed slaves outside the temple to tremble. But the abyssal demons, led by Limo, let out joyful howls. For them, today they can have an extra meal tilde. No, my lord, why? Balamu looked up to the sky in despair and unwillingness, tremblingly raised his right hand. However, before he could finish speaking, the power within them continued to drain even faster. And in the next moment, under the horrified gaze of many black-robed slaves behind him, those from the divine punishment sect, all turned into withered corpses, weakly falling to the ground. The wailing that filled the entire temple's hall abruptly stopped. The entire temple returned to calm strain, an eerie silence with no sound. The giant white wolf showed an astonished expression, looking disappointedly at the bodies on the ground. Howl asterisk I don't want to eat jerky. Her mother seemed to sense her thoughts as angry butterflies flew toward the giant wolf's face, causing her to panic and fall back onto the ground, gasping for breath. For Limo, she always felt very aggrieved that her mother didn't let her eat human flesh. Why can other abyssal demons do it, but I can't? Mother is a bully, asterisk sob asterisk tilde tilde. The giant wolf pulled her ears down in frustration. At the same time, outside Demon Temple, dozens of members of the divine punishment sect responsible for guarding the rear and preventing slaves from escaping heard the screams coming from inside the temple, and their expressions suddenly changed. A feeling of fear suddenly enveloped their hearts. As one member informed the others of what they saw, an endless fear flooded over them like a bursting dam. Not good, the situation has changed. We need to retreat. After glancing at each other, the rear team of dozens of people did not hesitate to turn and flee. However, just as they turned around, a gray-haired little girl appeared in front of them. I'm sorry, but Mommy didn't say anything about letting you go, so. And in the next moment, an emerald energy rose up under their feet, soaring into the sky. As the emerald energy rose from the ground, those who were planning to escape were suddenly enveloped by it. Before they could even utter a plea for mercy, they were burned to ashes by the scorching heat and completely dissipated emerald light. The immense pressure immediately swept over them, causing the slaves at the entrance of the main temple to tremble uncontrollably. Blood unconsciously flowed out of their body, and those with insufficient strength or weak stamina fell to the ground and fainted. Even those who could withstand this pressure were forced to kneel on the ground, staring in terror at the gray-haired little girl who suddenly appeared. These children, being victims themselves, understood the immense power wielded by the members of the divine punishment sect. Specifically, They were well aware of two exceptionally strong experts who had reached the formidable level of 6th level. However, such experts were easily killed by the gray-haired little girl. Moreover, the pressure emanating from her aura. This girl was definitely a demon. After coming to this conclusion, the survivors shuddered with fear and stared at the gray-haired little girl with a frightened look, afraid of becoming her next target. Amidst their worried expressions, a young girl wearing worn-out leather clothes and walking barefoot approached, taking one step at a time. As the little girl approached, their inner tension skyrocketed like a rocket. However, the little girl only sneered disdainfully at the fearful eyes of these slaves. Then, under the bewildered gaze of the crowd, the little girl walked past them and went straight into the temple. "Boring creatures," the little girl said, with a contemptuous look in her emerald-colored beautiful eyes. If it weren't for her mother's forbiddance, she would have cleaned up the trashes that had entered the temple long ago. She wouldn't spare them just because they were young and talented. Rather, these guys with strong soul power were even more capable of evoking her instinctual ferocity in the depths of her soul. Even the two small birds perched on her hairpin issued hostile screams toward the slaves. Talented. More reason to be killed. And when the gray-haired little girl walked into the temple, lying under a stone pillar in the distance, the pitiful snow-white giant wolf stood up excitedly and looked toward the gray-haired little girl, behind whom its large tail was shaking rapidly like a propeller after being scolded by Yumo. Without hesitation, the giant wolf bounded toward the gray-haired little girl. "Awu, Liu, you're back." Upon hearing the wolf's greeting, the gray-haired little girl, Liu, smiled and the contempt and coldness in her emerald eyes vanished, leaving behind warmth and a touch of helplessness. "I'm back, sister." The next moment, to the amazement of the survivors gathered at the temple gate, the once ferocious and fearsome giant wolf now displayed a gentle demeanor, as she humbly nuzzled her head against the little girl and affectionately lowered her own head in greeting. Liu happily held onto the giant wolf's furry head and rubbed her face against it. The 6-meter-tall wolf and the little girl with their faces close together left the survivors stunned. However, their staring clearly irritated Limo. After feeling their sharp gazes for a while, she frowned slightly and looked displeased at the people at the door of the temple. Coldness appeared in her bloody red eyes. "Ahu, ahu, what are you looking at? Don't disturb me and my little sister." As soon as she finished speaking, a strong and violent shadow force burst out from the wolf's body, instantly giving the survivors an unbearable sense of fear in their souls. In an instant, everyone fell unconscious. Of course, even so, Limo had shown mercy. After all, with her strength, just her aura alone could easily crush the souls of these ordinary people. The aura of a demon king was not something that creatures below the 6th level could bear. However, Limo's actions toward the survivors without permission still made Yumo slightly unhappy. A bloody butterfly flew slowly to the giant wolf's side and sent Yumo's reprimand to Limo's ears, making her shiver. "Limo, you unleashed your aura without considering the consequences again. What if you harmed those talented people?" After being scolded, the giant wolf's eyes no longer had the coldness from before. It lowered its head with a pitiful expression and even hid behind her little sister, weakly saying, "Mommy, I didn't mean it. Next time you're not allowed to act on your own." Woo-woo Tilda, I know. Sigh. Truly a troublesome child. Seeing this, Yumo sighed helplessly in her heart, and then the bloody-colored butterflies slowly flew to Liu's side. "You are back, Liu." "Yes." Seeing the bloody butterflies fly in front of her, Liu elegantly smiled and performed a very standard curtsy. "I'm back, mother." "Welcome back." Yumo smiled contentedly. Crimson energy slowly rippled around the bloody butterflies and turned into an energy arm, gently stroking Liyu's small head. The latter also enjoyed her mother's touch very much, and her jade-green eyes unconsciously radiated with happiness. Seeing her sister being petted by their mother, Limo suddenly poked her head out behind Liyu. Then her red eyes immediately rippled with a layer of ripples as she cowered her ears and looked at Yumo, acting cutely. This made Yumo somewhat speechless. But in the end, she still reluctantly used the shadow power to create another energy arm and gently stroke the giant wolf's head. Awu tilde tilde. Being petted, Limo even wagged her tail happily. Looking at the two adorable sisters in front of her, Yumo couldn't help but feel a myriad of emotions in her heart and even a sense of accomplishment. Thinking back to the past, when these two little creatures first entered the temple, they were so weak that they were on the verge of death. If I hadn't given them some power in time, the little white wolf and little howling bird would have died in the snowstorm of the winter forest. But now, these two little things, who were once so frail, have grown into abyssal demons of the Demon King level. Just thinking about my overall education, I feel quite accomplished. Yumo felt very pleased in her heart. However, there is one thing that troubles her. That is the problem of how these two little creatures address her. Because at the time, Yumo was just beginning to learn the common languages of the various races on the Ansita continent, and was not familiar with these languages. She didn't know what the little creatures meant when they called her something. At first, Yumo didn't understand, so she let Liyu and Limo call her Mamu. But as her vocabulary increased, Yumo finally understood the true meaning of this word. Mommy. Wait a minute. I'm a grown man. Although I am now just a consciousness. But my masculine consciousness is still strong, you know. After learning the meaning of Mamu, I naturally didn't want the children to continue calling me that. However, these two little children refused to change and kept insisting on calling her Mommy, even crying and saying that they felt like she was their mother. No matter how Yumo tried to teach them to say the word father, they refused to accept it, leaving Yumo feeling very frustrated. In the end, she had no choice but to give up and sigh helplessly. Thinking about this, Yumo couldn't help but sigh. If someday I can create a physical body, I must make it strong and handsome. Let these two little brats call me Daddy obediently. HMPH tilde. Well, but I've been called Mother and Mommy for hundreds of years. Will it be a bit strange if they suddenly call me Daddy or Father? Yumo couldn't help but feel a little conflicted. The original form of the two sisters, Liyu and Limo, wasn't human, but rather a spirit beasts that transformed into abyss demons. Unlike other demon kings who were thrown into Ansita continent to search for information about the protagonist group, these two children mostly stayed in Winter Forest. Even though they learned transformation magic, their lives were not much different from ordinary abyssal demons. Since these two children could transform into human form, Yumo selfishly hoped that they could give up their daily routine of eating raw meat and blood and learn human habits instead. However, the reactions of the two sisters to Yumo's proposal were completely opposite. Limo still longed for wild animal life and usually maintained her giant wolf form. She liked to eat live prey and was not interested in the cooked food that Yumo suggested, often making Yumo very frustrated. She could be considered a headache-inducing child. However, compared to her sister, Liyu was much more obedient. She worked hard to learn human life skills, including etiquette, language, and related knowledge. She mostly maintained the appearance of a little girl and even tried to avoid transforming into her original form to prevent damage to her few furry clothes. Recently, she was even learning how to cook food. However, based on Limo's reaction after each meal, her cooking skills still needed improvement. Unfortunately, Yumo did not have a physical body. Otherwise, she would have been able to taste her daughter's cooking and teach her some cooking skills. After all, when he was in high school, he often cooked by himself when his parents were not at home. But regardless, effort in trying is worth encouraging. Thinking of this, Yumo's expression toward Liu became more satisfied. In contrast, Yumo's gaze toward Limo became somewhat disdainful, which directly led to the latter transforming into a husky and starting a destructive activity in the temple. After being hit hard by Yumo's words, the husky, Aka Limo, finally stopped messing around. After some time, the quiet Limo finally transformed into her human form and put on her tattered leather coat. Then the wolf girl covered her swollen forehead and walked to the door of the main hall with a look of grievance, gently touching the unconscious humans on the ground with a branch. "Well, Mother, how do you plan to deal with these things? Are you going to use them for experiments?" However, before Yumo could answer, her little sister disdainfully looked at her and spoke. "Only ordinary people with no talent will be used for experiments by Mother. Young people with good talent like these, who have not done anything wrong, will be entrusted to Sister Yulin or Xiao to cultivate. Sis, you have been with Mom for so many years, can't you even understand this?" Woo-woo tilde tilde. Limo pouted and complained, looking at her sister with a resentful expression. Then she turned her head and said arrogantly, "Humph, I just deliberately asked to test you." Yes, sure. Liu didn't want to dwell on this irrelevant issue with her sister and walked up slowly, carefully examining these unconscious young people. A subtle touch of playfulness began to emerge within the depths of her mesmerizing emerald eyes. Their physical body and soul power are better than the sacrificial offerings from last time, and almost all of them are handsome and beautiful. Even the smaller ones are beauties. As she spoke, Liu turned to look at the bloody red butterflies floating behind her. "Mommy, speaking of which, didn't Zio recently set up a small spy organization? These guys should be able to become good new forces as long as their brains are properly washed. Coincidentally, Sebastian also came to visit you today. He can take them back and hand them over to Zio." Ahem. Sebastian. Upon hearing the name of an acquaintance, Limo felt energized and bounced over to Liu's side, curious to ask, "Seba, did that guy come today?" "Yeah, he's outside the barrier." "Huh, why isn't he coming in?" Faced with her sister's question, Liu pursed her lips and gave her a wide-eyed look. "Well, the reason is simple. The idiots from the Divine Punishment sect were here before, right? He couldn't come in to visit, so he's waiting outside." After speaking, Liu respectfully looked toward the bloody butterflies and said, "Mom, can we let him in now?" Glancing at the young man lying unconscious on the ground, and at Limo, who had just barely put on her clothes, several butterflies made of energy and willpower slowly flew toward the outside barrier. "Sure, you can let him in now. Speaking of which, it's been a long time since I've seen that guy. Time really flies." Without realizing it, Yumo felt like an old man and sighed inwardly. At the same time, Yumo called a few abyssal demons to clean up the dozen or so cold bodies in the center of the temple hall. After some time, to the slightly shocked gazes of the two sisters, a white-haired middle-aged man with a graceful aura, dressed in a black butler's outfit, slowly climbed the steps and entered this ancient temple. The newcomer was naturally Sebastian, who had once lived with Limo and Liu in Demon Temple for a long time. Looking at the two familiar figures in the temple and the bloody butterflies full of invisible pressure, Sebastian respectfully half-knelt on the ground, raised his right hand to his left chest, and placed his left arm behind his back. "Long time no see, Lady Yumo. Also, Lady Limo and Lady Liu." In his respectful words, there lingered a glimmer of delight upon seeing his benefactor and old friends. He was not an abyssal demon, but a pure human. Huh. Upon seeing the white-haired middle-aged man, Limo couldn't help but exclaim in disbelief and jumped to Sebastian's side, grabbing his white hair with her delicate hands. How did you get so old? Your hair has turned white." "Lady Limo, I'm just an ordinary human. It's normal to get old after more than 80 years. Is this considered normal?" "Yes." "But why are you only at the 5th level? Have you not been practicing properly?" asked Liu curiously. "Well, I have been practicing, but I don't have a talent for this. After all, I'm just an ordinary person with average talent. I'm already satisfied to have reached 5th level with Lord Zio's help," replied Sebastian with a smile. He waved his hand and gradually shifted his gaze to the bloody red butterflies dancing in front of him. At the same time, Yumo's words slowly entered Sebastian's mind. "If you're willing to accept some of my power, breaking through the 6th level won't be difficult. Thank you for your offer, my lady. However, I don't think my body can handle shadow energy. Besides, I still hope to live as a human," Sebastian replied gratefully. "I see. Well, since you've made your decision, I will respect it," Yumo said. "Thank you, Lady Yumo," Sebastian said, bowing his head in gratitude. "In addition, you don't have to bow every time you see me. The relationship between superiors and subordinates must be respected," Sebastian said. Why do you sound like an old-fashioned person even though you haven't seen me in over 80 years? Anyway, why did you suddenly come to Winter Forest? Is there something urgent?" asked Yumo. "Yes." Sebastian nodded, then looked solemnly at Yumo in front of him. "My lady, we have some important information to report to you." What is it?" "Firstly, we seem to have found information about the protagonists." Upon hearing this, not only Yumo and Liu, but even the usually carefree Limo couldn't help but focus their attention on Sebastian. "Wait, did you say you found WHO?" "In the Red Leaf Empire, at the headquarters of the Asumo's Church." Asumo's Church worships the great goddess who saved the world and brought about a new order to the world. Asumos means salvation and creation in the ancient language. The name of the church is also to commemorate the great goddess. As the most powerful religious force on Ensida continent, the interior of Asumo's church headquarters in the capital was naturally luxurious. In the spacious and bright hall, dozens of stone pillars with golden patterns and inlaid with colorful gemstones stood tall. Countless exquisite murals and exquisite religious artworks lined the interior of the hall. In the depths of the hall, there was a 30-meter-tall goddess statue that was as magnificent as a miracle. It was made of platinum diamonds and shone with a dazzling golden light when the sunlight shone on it through the glass dome. Such a miraculous sight would always make people feel awe-inspiring. At this moment, below the goddess statue, an elegant old man in a platinum robe was praying to the statue. After he finished praying, he slowly stood up and turned his head to look at the man who was kneeling at the front of the hall. The kneeling man was especially handsome, with beautiful golden long hair that made him look very sunny and dashing. He wore a silver armor, a holy steel longsword with demon-repellent power at his waist, and a white robe, and on top of the robe were runes resembling wings, which were outlined with rare golden silk threads. This man's name was Pix, a swordman at 7th level, and also one of the 10 apostles of Earth, Aka, Earth's hero of the Asumo's Church. He had once killed hundreds of abyssal demons and was highly respected by the people. And this man was kneeling quietly on the ground, waiting for the old man's instructions. After some time, the white-haired old man walked solemnly to Pix and spoke with an unquestionable tone. "Pix Rada, the 8th apostle, I order your team to go to the eastern part of Winter Forest along the T3 route to investigate and explore the internal division of the Abyssal Demon. According to ancient records, the Demon Temple is located in the eastern region. If you have the chance, you can try to explore it. I obey your holiness. Also, this is a map of the known distribution of the abyssal demons, which can help you reduce unnecessary conflicts. Remember, do not make too much noise. The Snow Knight Empire in the east is not very friendly toward us. Saying that, the white-haired old man took out a scroll from his spatial ring and handed it to Pix. Picking up the scroll, Pix solemnly bowed his head and said with great respect, "Understood, Archbishop Nick." Yes, yes. After a while, Pix, who had finished meeting with Archbishop, left the main hall of the Holy City under the guidance of a maid. He then delivered the Archbishop's instructions to his teammates. Upon hearing Pix's words, his team members' faces immediately showed unease. One petite brown-haired girl walked up to Pix and nervously tugged at the captain's sleeve. "Captain, venturing deep into the east, are they serious? Aren't we usually just exploring the outskirts? With our strength, if we go deeper into the east, we may encounter a large number of abyss demons or even encounter a demon king. If that happened, we would be doomed." "Yeah, Captain, isn't this mission beyond our capabilities? Is Archbishop out of his mind?" His other team members also raised their doubts. To this, Pix patted the brown-haired girl's head and comforted her. "It's okay, don't worry. Our route was carefully selected to avoid major monsters gathering places. Without food for these demons, it will be unlikely to have many abyss demons around too. As for the demon kings, we don't need to worry too much. Based on observations over the past 100 years, there should only be 3 demon king-class existents active in the Winter Forest. Among them, Deathwing has always been hovering over the west, while Nightmare is in the middle of the lake area. We won't encounter them in the east. As for Snow Devourer, although its whereabouts are unknown, as long as we are careful, we shouldn't run into them. Lily, you don't need to worry too much." Pix encouraged the brown-haired girl by patting her shoulder. With their captain's words, the team members felt a lot more at ease. "Okay, we understand, Captain." At this time, Beckham, the muscular man who had been silent for a long time, frowned unhappily. "But Captain, wasn't this exploration mission originally meant for that woman Bai Yanluo? Why was it suddenly assigned to us? Did that trash woman pass the buck again?" "No, I have been informed that Lady Bai Yanluo was sent to accompany the new girl." "The new girl? Is it the one with extremely high compatibility with holy power?" "Yes, that's her." Pix nodded slightly. After receiving affirmation from their captain, the girl named Lily couldn't help but show an excited expression. As one of the top 10 brave heroes, Pix had the privilege of meeting that girl yesterday. According to the oracle passed down by Asumo's religion, she is the girl of destiny, beautiful, kind, and filled with holy power, who will become the new saintess and lead the people of this continent to resist the invasion of the abyssal demons, ultimately destroy Demon Temple, and eliminate the source of all tragedies. After seeing the silver-haired girl, Pix had to admit that she was the most perfect beauty he had ever seen, a masterpiece of the Creator, and exuded a strong aura of holiness. Although the girl appeared fragile, her excellent performance in the arena was shocking. Even though she was just a civilian girl who had not received much training, her combat movements were so smooth. Even though she only had the strength of a low-stage 5th level, she beat up a 6th-level Knight Commander. Beautiful and powerful, this was Pix's first impression of the Girl of Destiny. However, in the momentary eye contact with the girl's eyes, Pix inexplicably felt a chill down his spine. In that moment, he read from the girl's eyes not the gentle warmth that a saintess should have, but an indescribable, incredibly profound coldness. It was not at all the warmth that a saintess should have. For a moment, Pix even had the illusion of facing a demon king or an abyssal demon. Even now, he still had lingering fears. At the same time, in the winter forest, inside Demon Temple, after listening to Sebastian's explanation, the bloody butterflies that embodied Yumo suddenly danced excitedly. So, you mean the girl taken away by Asumo's church is the heroine? Wow, after waiting for so many years, there is finally news of the protagonists. My lady, as for the male lead, if our estimation is correct, the crown prince of the Snow Knight Empire is the person you are looking for. Sebastian said respectfully. Upon hearing Seba's words, Liu and Limo, who had been listening on the sidelines for a long time, inexplicably fell into a strange silence and exchanged meaningful glances with each other. I see, Yumo replied lightly. Although her tone was very flat, the bloody butterflies that had taken shape from her consciousness were excitedly flapping around in midair, reflecting Yumo's true inner form at the moment. Female lead, male lead. After so many years they finally appeared. That's great. Finally, I don't have to keep waiting foolishly. Although Yumo had to act very calm to maintain the so-called authority of the parents on the surface, her heart was already jumping with joy. In order to achieve the trial goal, she must make the male and female lead, the son and girl of destiny in this world, grow up. In order to help them grow better, she must first find these protagonists. For this reason, Yumo sent her own children and some humans who had successfully accepted her power to search for news of male and female leads on the continent hundreds of years ago. However, it took hundreds of years to find them. From the day she was sent here till now, Yumo did not obtain any information about them. The initial expectation was completely gone, and her heart became more and more depressed. Of course, Yumo didn't blame her own children. After all, it was not easy for them to hide the aura and energy of Abyssal Demon. It was perhaps too difficult for them to search for information on the vast continent. Even so, Yumo couldn't help feeling disappointed, and her mind was often filled with wild thoughts. Could it be that the storyline hasn't started yet? Has the trial not started yet? If so, how much longer do I have to stay in this forest? Another few hundred years, or a few thousand years? Speaking of which, the woman who sent me here didn't even tell me when the trial was going to start. Every time Yumo was thinking of this, she would be caught in such a dilemma, and her emotions would inevitably become extremely low. At all times, Yumo was eagerly anticipating news of the protagonists. Therefore, after receiving relevant information from Seba today, she felt so happy inside. If she had a body, she should be jumping around with excitement now. Looking at the bloody butterflies surrounded by a joyful atmosphere in front of him, Sebastian smiled slightly. He saw through her but didn't say anything. After a moment, the butterflies, whose mood finally stabilized, reluctantly said with light words, Not bad, well done. Thank you for your praise, my lady. By the way, did you just say there were other things to tell me? Is there anything else? Yes, there are. Sebastian nodded slightly, and Yumo said excitedly. Then just say it, Tilda. The tone of the butterflies became more and more joyful. Every time Zio sent someone to her, they bring a lot of good news. So, under the expectant gaze of Yumo, Sebastian cleared his throat and slowly said, And also, Lord Zio asked me to thank Lady Yumo on his behalf. Thanks to your provision of magic crystals, our Black Rose family has successfully unified the southeast of the Sadic Empire. 1/3 of this empire is now under our control. Lord Zio has also been promoted from a marquis to a duke, second only to that foolish emperor. At the same time, our small intelligence organization has also completed the infiltration of the surrounding small kingdoms and is now trying to establish a foothold in the Red Leaf Empire. Oh, not bad, not bad. Yumo gave a satisfying answer, which made her heart happy. She couldn't help but feel emotional too. Wow, the grandson of that old man is a bit powerful now. After all, Yumo still remembered that when he helped the ancestor of Black Rose family, this family was just a fallen Baron family in the east of the Sadik Empire, and after several generations of development, they have become a duke family now. By the way, there are only 2 dukes in the entire Sadik Empire, right? That kid, he deserves a reward. Yumo silently recorded this in her memory. Not bad, not bad. If his power continues to develop, we can also collect a lot of information in the future. Yes, please rest assured that our Black Rose family will do our best to collect information on the protagonist for my lady, Sebastian said respectfully. Ahem. Yumo replied without comment. Every member of Black Rose family was trained by her since childhood. They were all the children she watched grow up. Tilda. Regarding this family, Yumo was naturally very confident. Of course, that's usually the case. Well, is there anything else? Yes, there is something big, my lady. Did you hear about the elven race's holy sword? Holy sword? Yeah, I know about that. Some people have used this sword to try and kill me hundreds of years ago. What happened to that sword? The elven race used a secret method to create a sword spirit from it. Oh, a sword spirit. That's quite rare. If the sword can produce a sword spirit, its power should be greatly enhanced. If we can equip the protagonist team with it later, it should increase their combat effectiveness a lot. As the final villain who is always concerned about the growth of the protagonist, Yumo silently noted this matter in her heart. However, after hearing this, Limo, who was next to her, tilted her head in confusion and said, "It's just a sword spirit, it's not really that big of a deal, is it? We've seen this type of weapon spirit before. It's not a big deal, right? Why are you telling Mom so seriously? Sebastian, I am confused." "I haven't finished yet, Miss Limo." "Oh, what else is there?" "Even though it's not that rare for a holy sword to have a sword spirit, the key is that, with the help of the elven race's secret method, this holy sword with a sword spirit has successfully transformed into a human form." Transformed into a human form? So what? Is that a trivial matter? Limo said dismissively. Sebastian equals. Limo's lack of response didn't mean that the others didn't react. After hearing Sebastian's words, Limo's sister, Liu, who was next to her, denied her sister's statement and said excitedly, "No, this is not a trivial matter. The sword spirit is to some extent the management consciousness of the sword body. This is kind of the same as Mom's situation." As she spoke, Liu looked excitedly at Sebastian. "So, if Mother uses this secret method, can she also transform into human form?" Huh. After hearing her little sister's words, Limo suddenly realized what Liu meant, and her furry ears stood up. She immediately rushed to Sebastian's side and shook his collar. "Really? If Mommy can use this thing, then she can have a body too. Then we can hug Mommy without any worries." Seba, what are you still waiting for? Hurry up and bring this secret method to Mommy." Okay, calm down, Miss Limo," Sebastian said with a helpless smile. "Don't worry, Lord Zio has peacefully obtained this secret method from the elven race and asked me to bring it to Lady Yumo." Transformation. Will it work? After hearing Sebastian's words, Yumo seemed to be slightly unconscious due to excessive excitement. For over 500 years, she had longed to have her own body. Without a body, there were so many things she couldn't do. Although she could make her consciousness have a vision and hearing through her perception ability, she still lacked smell, taste, and other sensory touches. Without a body, she couldn't communicate with people normally, couldn't feel the comfort of the breeze on her face, couldn't enjoy the unique cuisine of other worlds, although she hadn't seen anything delicious yet. More importantly, without a body, she could only stay in the depths of the eastern part of Winter Forest. After spending hundreds of years there, Yumo was long tired of it. What's the difference between this and being imprisoned? I want to get out. Yumo often roared like this in her heart, but it was ultimately powerless rage. Her original form was a temple, and she couldn't move on her own. However, if she could use transformation magic to create a body for herself, she might be able to end this embarrassing prison life and personally see the outside world. After all, since she came to this different world, she should take a good look around, right? It was undoubtedly lacking in sensory experience to just listen to others describe the outside world. Unfortunately, the transformation magic used by Limo and Liu didn't seem to work on her. Therefore, while having her children investigate the protagonist's intelligence, Yumo also asked them to help investigate other transformation magic. Today, what a good day was it! Yumo couldn't help feeling excited in her heart. Not only did she obtain relevant information about the protagonists, but she also gained information about new transformation magic. Although she wasn't sure if it would work for her or not, Yumo was still looking forward to it. After all, this set of transformation magic seemed to be different from the biological one used before. After stabilizing her joyful mood, under Yumo's control, the bloody butterflies flew to Seba's side. Not bad, not bad, this is really good news. Well done, little Seba. As she spoke, Yumo habitually used her shadow power to shape an energy arm and gently patted Sebastian's head, making him blush and look embarrassed. Lady Yumo, I'm not a kid anymore. However, Sebastian's protest obviously had no effect, and Yumo still absent-mindedly touched Sebastian's head. For Yumo, although Sebastian was old, he was still the crying child of that year. After some time, Yumo stopped under the extremely jealous and envious eyes of Limo and Liu. So you have obtained that magic, right? Yes. Sebastian nodded with a smile. Then, under a faint blue light, he opened the spatial ring on his index finger. After a wave of spatial ripples, a delicate sheepskin scroll appeared in Sebastian's hand. Then, he held the scroll with both hands and handed it to the bloody butterfly in front of him. Lady Yumo, this scroll contains all the information of the transformation magic created by the elves. Wow, those long-eared guys deserve their fame. The scroll is beautifully made and even set with gems. How extravagant. After receiving the scroll with her energy hand, Yumo couldn't help but marvel. After taking a look at it, Yumo put the scroll into the storage space and said with a slightly apologetic tone to him, "Sorry, little Seba, I won't accompany you for the time being. Let Limo and Liu play with you until I come back." Although Yumo had many things to ask him after a long time apart, such as if has he started a family, how many children he has, and so on. But compared to these trivial family matters, Yumo's thoughts were almost completely attracted by the transformation magic scroll of the elves, and she temporarily had no energy to pay attention to other issues. Regarding this, Sebastian said he could understand. "It's okay, my lady." "Yes, Mom, just go ahead." Liu next to them spoke slowly, while her emerald eyes glanced thoughtfully at Sebastian, who was kneeling on the ground. "Well, it just so happens that my sister and I haven't seen Seba for a long time, and there are many things we want to talk to him about." "That's great, then I'll leave Seba to you." "Yes, leave it to us, Mommy." Liu smiled and patted her chest, making a promise. "Well, thank you, Tilda, hee. After speaking, dozens of bloody red butterflies floating around the three people slowly disintegrated and turned into tiny crimson light particles, dissolving into the sky. Just as Yumo's presence was dissipating, Liu's smile suddenly disappeared, and a burst of dazzling emerald light burst out of her eyes, and the power of the emerald shadows crazily surged around the girl. Behind her, a pair of gray wings suddenly spread out. "Come with me." Without hesitation, Liu grabbed Sebastian's collar and turned into a jade-colored meteor, breaking through the barrier. Limo also mobilized her power, turning into a white light and following closely behind. A moment later, on a snowy mountain far from the demon temple and beyond Yumo's perception, Liu slowly stopped her pace, and the gray wings behind her slowly retracted into her body. Limo, who had caught up from behind, stood quietly next to Liu, while Sebastian, who had been pulled half to death, was awkwardly thrown onto the snow. Adjusting his hair, which had been messed up due to the high-speed movement, admiring the beautiful and magnificent snowy scenery around him, before looking helplessly at the two sisters in front of him. While elegantly wiping the remaining snowflakes off his face with a handkerchief, Sebastian chuckled. "Miss Liu, if you wanted to take me sightseeing, you could have just said so. Why did you have to suddenly drag me here? My old bones can't take such violent movements anymore." His words were as friendly as always, but Liu's current state was completely different from her previous appearance inside the barrier of the temple. She was no longer the cute and obedient daughter, her smile had vanished, and instead there was an unmistakable feeling of heaviness and a chilling, deadly determination in her green eyes. The surging jade-colored force caused the surrounding snowy mountains to tremble and distort, making the space crack. Faced with this sudden and immense pressure, countless monsters and abyssal demons residing near the snowy mountain couldn't help but tremble. Even with the amulet given by the Duke, Sebastian still felt short of breath and his soul trembled. The girl in front of him seemed to be on the brink of a volcanic eruption. However, even so, he still maintained the elegant posture of a qualified butler. "Miss Liu, what's wrong with you?" "What's wrong?" Liu snorted coldly, raising her small hand and suddenly grabbing Sebastian's neck with lightning speed, pressing him against the giant rock behind him. She fiercely interrogated him. "Seba, oh no, Sebastian, how dare you ask me what's wrong? I want to ask you, didn't you say you killed the son of destiny 13 years ago? How has he appeared again? Forget about the female lead for now. What about the male lead? Wasn't he supposed to be dead 13 years ago? Did you guys fail back then?" Staring intensely at Sebastian, in Liu's eyes appeared an unprecedented brutality. This thick and extreme brutality made everything within tens of miles fall into a deathly silence. In anger, Liu's hand around Sebastian's neck tightened even more, making it difficult for him to breathe. Although Liu usually tried to maintain a good girl in front of Yumo, her true nature was still that of a powerful and brutal demon. Once the hidden brutality in her heart was provoked, the consequences were unimaginable. Fortunately, Limo came forward in time and pulled at her sister's clothes corner, carefully saying, Liu, stop, you'll kill him." Kill him." Hearing her sister's words, Liu finally realized that she had gone too far. If he died, she wouldn't be able to explain it to her mother, among other things. Thinking of this, Liu reluctantly released her grip on Sebastian's neck, and he fell off the giant rock, sitting on the ground, panting heavily. However, although he had been treated so violently, there was no trace of displeasure on Sebastian's face. He understood Liu's feelings very well. After all, when he first heard the news, he was shocked and angry and even smashed his desk into powder. The people around Yumo, except for Yumo herself, didn't want the protagonists to survive. They all wished to kill them as soon as possible, and he was the same. After wiping the blood from his mouth with a handkerchief, he took a deep breath. "Miss Liu, I understand your feelings, but please calm down. We definitely did not fail back then. After killing the male lead, Duke Zio not only cut off his head and removed his heart, but also used 5 consecutive holy domain magics to thoroughly crush him. The male lead is definitely dead and cannot die anymore. Upon hearing his word, along with the comfort of her sister by her side, Liu gradually calmed down. However, her emerald eyes were still filled with confusion and incomprehension. Died? Then what about the one in Snow Knight Empire, that ridiculous prince? Sorry, we're not sure about that either. But from the intelligence we have, that man also had those golden patterns behind him. He should be the male lead. What this? Well, we're also a bit confused, so we're still investigating. Okay. Liu took a deep breath, but her emerald eyes still showed dissatisfaction. For sure, Liu was very unhappy with Sebastian's actions. Okay, even if you didn't make a mistake before, why did you have to tell a mother about the protagonist this time? Can't you just solve it privately? That Zio guy, he's a divine magician now. Is it difficult for him to eliminate 2 rookies? Divine equals 8th level. To Liu's questioning, Sebastian shook his head. To be honest, it's not easy to solve it privately this time. The male lead is the prince and always stays in the palace of Snow Knight Empire, and the female lead, after we received the news, entered the headquarters of Asumo's church. These 2 places can no longer be easily destroyed like before. As he spoke, he stood up with difficulty and began his most skillful persuasion. Moreover, Liu, think carefully about the state of Lady Yumo these past years. What is the biggest issue she cares about? The male and female leads and their companions. Yes, what Lady Yumo cares most about is the protagonist group. If the male and female leads are quietly killed by us, Lady Yumo will still be concerned about them in the future, putting all her energy into something that doesn't exist. Is that what we want to see? Thinking back to the months when her mother didn't play with her in order to get equipment for the protagonist group, Liu shook her head repeatedly. No. In addition, even if we succeed to kill them, we need to attack the capitals of 2 major forces without authorization from Lady Yumo. It's hard to keep such a big thing hidden. If one day Lady Yumo knows what we did, how will she feel? We not only acted on our own but also secretly killed the protagonists. If Lady Yumo finds out, she will definitely be very disappointed in us. Liu, Limo, you don't want to disappoint Lady Yumo, do you? No, I don't want to, said Liu and Limo almost simultaneously, after exchanging a glance. Disappointing their mother was one of the last things they wanted to see. After listening to his words, Liu had already regained her composure and solemnly bowed to Sebastian as an apology. Even Limo obediently imitated her sister's actions, although not quite perfectly. I'm sorry, Seba, I got a bit too overwhelmed just now. It's okay, Miss Liu, I understand. But what are you planning to do after you told Mother about this? Liu's emerald eyes still had some confusion. For this expected question, Sebastian smiled slightly, but this time his smile had a chilling touch to it. We all know that Lady Yumo has been wanting to cultivate the protagonists to destroy herself, right? She's been constantly searching for information about the protagonists and preparing trial checkpoints. We don't want that, do we? Well, at the same time, we also don't want Lady Yumo to keep consuming her energy waiting for these so-called chosen ones, right? Right, so what's your plan? It's simple. In Lady Yumo's eyes, there seems to be only one male and one female protagonist. We'll inform her of the information about the appearance of the male and female lead, so she knows that the protagonists have already appeared. Then, if the male and female leads suddenly have an unexpected accident and die, Lady Yumo will surely abandon her suicide plan, won't she? Oh, that makes sense. Liu placed her hand on her chin and fell into a brief contemplation. On the other hand, Limo didn't quite understand, but she still pretended to be in deep thought, imitating her sister by holding her chin with her hand. The 3 of them began to think, but just then, a ray of crimson light flickered in the sky, and a familiar and overwhelmingly powerful aura rushed into their perception, causing their faces to change suddenly. What is this aura? In an instant, the three of them immediately abandoned their contemplation and turned their heads in astonishment toward the direction of the eastern part of Winter Forest, where the demon's temple was located. At this moment, a red light had already risen from the direction of Demon's Temple, shooting straight into the sky, shaking the clouds for thousands of miles. The terrifying power of shadow and the unparalleled pressure from the depths of the soul continued to spread out in all directions from the light. The immense power spread wildly like a bursting dam, causing mountains to collapse and the earth to shake. Countless abyssal demons and monsters lost consciousness and fell into a coma the moment when they were swept away by the red aura. Even strong demon kings like Limo and Liu felt an unprecedented trembling. The howling wind swept past, and suddenly the sky was torn apart. Crimson light replaced the sunshine, shining on the earth and making everything covered in a layer of the red veil. Then, under the delighted gaze of everyone, the endless red shadow power that had been liberated suddenly flowed back toward the center of Demon Temple. The liberation and condensation of power are the two most important parts when using transformation magic for the first time. The liberation part has already been completed, and the condensation part seems to be going smoothly, which means the transformation magic worked. Limo and Liu looked at each other for a moment, both showing expressions of joy. Then, they suddenly liberated the power of shadow in their bodies and rushed toward the location of their mother, facing the fierce, stormy power. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and like the video and comment down if anything wrong in the story, and if have any suggestion to a new novel or want next part of any series, comment down. Our target is to get 1K subscriber. There will be SUPRISC for all of you. Stay tuned.